In a twisted turn of events, the FIA has decided to disqualify Russell from the Belgian GP due to his car being 1.5 kilos under the weight limit, and therefore Hamilton has inherited the win of the race, marking the 105th one in his career and the second one this season. But with this bombshell from the FIA, was there anything that Mercedes could have done in order to prevent this scenario? And if so, did they know it before the race ended, judging by Wolff's face when both of the cars crossed the finish line? George Russell had one of the best weekends in his career in Belgium, but unfortunately for him, the win was taken away due to his car not meeting the criteria in terms of weight limit. Being 1.5 kilos lighter was the final act for Russell's race, and this is something that was worth around 0.2 per second over a lap, according to the experts. And to top that off, it seems like the strategy that Russell pulled for himself, the one-stopper, has also helped in this scenario becoming a reality. The wear on the tires was so big that it could have influenced the final weight of the car to a huge extent. And on top of that, Russell and anybody else weren't able to complete an in-lap in which he would have picked up marbles and more rubber on his way in, which is why the disqualification comes at an even bigger, more painful cost for Mercedes. Be that as it may, the team has now lost 18 points in the Constructors' Championship, and Perez still managed to keep the P7 in the drivers' category. But even with this narrative, it's safe to assume that Mercedes are forced to be reckoned with, and they will be for quite some time right now. When talking about the current situation, Andrew Shovlin said that Mercedes will launch an investigation and won't let things rest, as he added, "It's really tough for George to have been disqualified from the win after such an impressive drive. He did a brilliant job to hang on to the tires and defend to the finish. We don't yet understand why the car was underweight following the race, but we will investigate thoroughly to find the explanation. We expect that the loss of rubber from the one stop was a contributing factor, and we'll work to understand how it happened. We won't be making any excuses though. It's clearly not good enough, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen again." Again, while this is something that pains Mercedes, they have a lot of positives to extract from this weekend. Just look at where they were on Friday and where they are right now, winning a race and being stripped from a 1-2 finish that would have put them a lot closer to Ferrari and McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. This is a category in which Mercedes does not plan to stop climbing anytime soon, and considering that Perez has dropped from P2 to P8 during the race, Red Bull are likely to work on the second driver factor sooner rather than later in order to make sure that the remainder of the 2024 won't slip out of their hands. Even though Hamilton was at shock with his team due to the strategy that they've put him on, as he also believed a one-stopper was available to take given the fact that his tires were behaving perfectly every time they called him in for a pit stop, he might be thankful now that his car has passed the minimum weight check. Elaborating on his 105th win, one that he would have rather taken on the track than off it, Hamilton said, "It is of course disappointing for the team to lose the 1-2, but there are lots of positives to take away from today. The car was feeling good, and we had much better pace than we expected. There were several cars that seemed similar in terms of performance, but once we got ahead, we were able to maintain that position. We committed to the top-stop strategy and covered those directly behind us." It is interesting to see whether Hamilton is regretting the decision to have joined Ferrari from 2025 onwards, given the fact that Mercedes is now probably one of the fastest cars on the grid and will be fighting with McLaren for more race wins and podium finishes, which directly aids Verstappen's championship defense because now there are more drivers involved to take points away from Norris and Leclerc. But the 7-time world champion is very confident in the pace that Mercedes has and will continue to have in 2024, as he doesn't feel discouraged by the fact that these are the last 11 races that he will have with his squad, further adding, "I feel for George, and you don't want to win a race through a disqualification, but we have been back in the fight for victories in the past few races. It is incredibly competitive now, so we'll need to work hard to battle for wins more consistently. Nevertheless, we can go into the summer break with momentum and positivity." The entire behavior of Mercedes during the Belgian GP was quite questionable to say the least, because they didn't listen to Hamilton when he said that the tires were behaving good, with the excuse that they wanted to cover themselves from the undercut that was posed by Leclerc and Norris. On the other hand, after starting P6 and using all of the situations ahead of him, Russell was able to climb to P1, and his one-stopper was less risky, according to Wolff, who elaborated on the entire situation with the pit stops and made sure that there is no bad blood between both Mercedes drivers now that both of them can fight for race wins. Elaborating on why Russell and Hamilton were on a different strategy, Wolff went on to say, "I'd like to have two winners today, but we had to cover Leclerc and Norris. We would have been undercut, and that was the call, and George had nothing to lose. We were P5, and the one-stop and two-stop strategies were showing P5, so we just kept him out. George was very good today, but when you look at the pace, Lewis was also good. They both did a fabulous job. The strategy played out for George and not for Lewis, but as I said, I'd like to have two winners today. We just need to keep both feet on the ground and try to do our best in every race, and then we're going to see what the outcome is at the end of the championship. If we had finished third in Spa, it would have been a success nonetheless." However, if you are to ask Hamilton, the team could have done a better strategy because for the majority of the race he was leading and Russell was nowhere to be found on the map, but when he emerged as a potential race winner due to the other two stoppers that included his teammate, Mercedes made sure to keep things competitive and to keep Russell ahead. And what else can we say other than kudos to the young Brit who made it work with older tyres? However, it did seem like it was a bit over the limit because 1.5 kilos is not exactly a small margin to break, and this is why Mercedes should be more wary of similar situations in the foreseeable future, as they are now a team that must be understood seriously as a front contender, so mistakes of this caliber won't be easily forgotten by the rest of the grid. Elaborating on the strategy choice of his team, Hamilton said, "To get a 1-2 going into summer break is pretty spectacular. I wasn't expecting us to be as strong as we were, but it felt great to get in the lead. A bit of a shock at the end, but we'll take it and move forward. We can all go into the summer break with our heads high. For sure, it is a positive fight with your teammate. George wasn't really in my race for most of it, so if the strategy had been done right, he wouldn't have been in my race, and we wouldn't have been having that fight. But it is great that at the end, we gave cars so far ahead." This is not where the progress of Mercedes stops, as the team has planned more upgrades for the first race after the summer break in Zandvoort, one where they hope to break Verstappen's winning streak and make sure that Red Bull won't have a walk-in-the-park type of second half of the season, one that is likely to see Perez replaced due to the bad results of the Mexican driver. Even though many thought that Mercedes found the performance by removing the upgrades from the car on Friday, believing that they were the ones causing the incompetence, Wolff said that the team has probably tripped over something mechanical rather than an entire set of upgrades, and they will add the new floor in Zandvoort. With all this in mind, do you think that Mercedes have rejuvenated their form? And more importantly, do you think they have what it takes to fight with Red Bull on a frequent basis? Let us know in the comments below.